What is up, fellas and lady fellas? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today I've got a discussion video talking about Traptrix, one of my personal favorite decks of all time, like straight up of all time. This is probably top 3 for me, is one of the top 3 decks I've been playing over the last couple months, year, I guess you could say. But yeah, it's a really cool. Pretty much ever since Sarah got revealed, I became extremely interested in the deck, and I love the way it plays. I love the fact that Traptrix is a card. You have so much synergy with just normal traps. I love traps. I love them. I love decks that play traps. But anyway, today I'm talking about 10 different tech options. Well, actually it's 11, but 10 sounds better, and I couldn't decide on the last one to get rid of, so I decided to just keep them all in. Yeah, we're talking about tech choices for this deck, because this deck actually, weirdly, works with like so much stuff. There's actually like so many just like random cards that are just like really good in this deck, so I'm going to be highlighting everything there. Weird tech choices. Keep in mind these are tech choices, so nothing generic like hand traps, nothing generic like Waking the Dragon, which you should be considering for like any back row heavy deck, stuff like that. Like these are like particularly like weirdish kind of cards, sort of, or at least have like specific synergy with Sarah. So or at least the archetype as a whole. So let's get into it. I don't want to waste too much time. So we're going to be doing these in order in terms of like, we're doing monsters, spells, traps, extra deck monsters, just going in that order, just for my OCD's sake. So starting off here, we start with a very cool card coming from Eternity Code. This card is, I believe, the only card on the list that's not out yet, but it's really cool. So if you don't know what this card does, he pretty much says if you link summon a link monster, you can special summon him from your hand to a zone that link monster points to. Then, also, whenever he's special summoned by an effect of Parallel Exceed, which is him, its attack and level get cut in half. So, or attack, defense, and level. So he becomes 1000 level 4. It's very important. Because also when he is normal or special summoned, he can special summon another Parallel Exceed straight from the deck. That also counts as being special summoned by Parallel Exceed, so it would also become level 4, 1000, which means they just become huge. That's it. I mean, like, that's all it really means, is that they just become level 4s extenders. He's just a +1, gets you 2 level 4s on the field for free, pretty much, as long as you opened up a Traptrix monster, which is very easy to do. And yeah, he gets you there. He gets you right into a rank 4, so you can end Sarah plus a rank 4 way easier, not just by opening Shade Brigandine. And if you open Shade Brigandine too, you have to go even further, way further. You have to open 2 rank 4s and a Sarah with some back row, which is really strong. So yeah, he's a really crazy card. I definitely would consider playing 2 at least. I'm definitely going to be playing at least 2, maybe even 3 if I want to just see it that bad. It's really cool. Really like it. Next up is Super Poly. So this is an interesting one as well. I know this is a more generic card, but I think this card specifically for what the deck wants to do, what the deck struggles with, does have synergy in a way. And what that is this deck is not good going second. Not particularly, just not based on what the deck does inherently. It doesn't have very many strong assets going second. So Super Poly is a very powerful, just like one card that can help you pretty much neutralize an entire board state in a lot of situations. Not every single time, but in most situations, this can almost just by itself neutralize an entire board state and get things back to even, where then from there you do some small Traptrix plays and you set 3-4 back row and say, okay, now it's back to you. Your board's been neutralized, so it's almost like they're playing going second now, like trying to play into your board, and that's when you can take advantage of the board state. So that's something that I think is pretty important. And it's just really good. Like, also the deck doesn't need a ton of extra deck slots. You end up, like, once you put like the essential stuff in your extra deck, you're left with like 5 to 7, maybe 8 slots in the extra deck. That could just be Super Poly stuff, like Super Poly targets. Super easy to put in. You don't have to play that many, actually, if you don't want to. You could just play 3 or 4, like a smaller package, just of like the main stuff you're expecting to see meta-wise. But yeah, I think it's really good. It's good against the meta. It just rips through a board by itself. So instead of playing like less impactful hand traps, you could play stuff like this, a little more impactful, just quick one card like gets you there. Then we move to the traps. There's going to be mostly traps in this video because that's how this works. It's Traptrix. This is the first card. This is a really interesting card. If you don't know what this card is, it's Switcheroo, and it has a very interesting effect that I believe works a certain way that we'll get to in a sec. But the ruling is questionable. So this card says if you control the same number of monsters as your opponent, you switch control of all those monsters. So you switch control of everything on the field. So ideally the situation is you have a Sarah that special summoned a Traptrix already, so you have 2 monsters. Your opponent is trying to do things, so they have 2 monsters. In the middle of that, you hit them with the Switcheroo. You attempt to switch all monsters on the field, but Sarah is actually unaffected by trap effects, so she cannot be swapped. So the idea here is you give them 1 mediocre Traptrix monster, and you take both of their monsters and say, okay, I like this. And then Sarah then triggers to get, well, if you hadn't already triggered Sarah, you probably would have if you already had a monster. But like potentially you could trigger Sarah again and do some other stuff. It's pretty cool. The only thing is like, one, it has to be meet the requirement. Both players have to have the same number of monsters on the field. So that's something you need to definitely worry about. But if it does, this card can be insanely powerful in the deck, for sure. And there's no restrictions or anything. So you take their monster and you just keep it. It's there. You have it for good. So it's really, really strong in that aspect. I really think it's a cool card. If the ruling works the way I think it does, I think this card is definitely a card everybody needs to be considering in Traptrix, for sure. Then we have Naturia Sacred Tree. This is actually a card I saw from Team Bortle. He plays Traptrix. That's like his main deck that he's been playing for the last little bit. But a very cool deck, a very cool card, actually. Pretty much what this is a continuous trap where once per turn, as a quick effect, you can do one of 2 things. You can either tribute an Earth Insect to special summon an Earth Plant from your deck, or you can tribute an Earth Plant to special an Earth Insect from the deck. Well, if you didn't know, Traptrix monsters are pretty much only insects and plants, and they're all earth, so you just get to cycle through your Traptrix stuff endlessly. It's really cool. This card really like expedites your ability to just do like Dionea, Myrmelio, and like Mantis abilities. Like, so you go like Dionea, reset 1, and then at some point you go into Mantis, then Mantis like bounces the set 1 back to your hand so you can reset it. That way it doesn't leave the field, and you just get to like keep resources, keep recycling. You go Myrmelio to pop stuff. You go, Mantis is like quick back row dodging, and like just weird utility out of this card. You get to just cycle through stuff really quick, which is pretty cool. And it's just once per turn. So you do it your turn, your opponent's turn, your turn, your opponent's turn, back and forth, nonstop. And it kind of feels like pretty tough for your opponent to like break through it. So it's cool. The one thing I'll say about it is it's not a normal trap. Doesn't work with Sarah, doesn't work with Traptrix. So that's the main drawback I have with it, but it is what it is. It's still good. Synergizes with the deck. Next up is artifacts. I don't even want to explain these too much. Like when I have Sanctum up here, I'm pretty much considering this all artifact stuff. Scythe, Moral Attack, potentially Ignition even, Sanctum, and Dagda. All 5, 6, and this card, right? Because 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. So 5. Like 5 cards that you can almost consider as part of this package. It's a very, very cool package, especially with Dagda, so that if you open up the ability to actually like semi-combo off stuff like Paralog Seeds, stuff like Shade Brigandine, you could easily be in a situation where you can Dagda set up like some strong plays to like artifact your opponent on their turn, scythe them, lock them out of the extra deck, and a lot of decks just won't be able to do much after that. So yeah, I'm just considering the whole package part of this. Next up is Phantom Knights of Shade Brigandine. This is a card I brought up earlier. I know this is almost like a staple in the deck, but I feel like its synergy is just too perfect with the deck. I had to put it on this list. If you don't know how this card works, if you control no trap card, or if you have no trap cards in your graveyard, I'm sorry, you can actually activate this the turn it's set. So you can just activate it, and so what that does, it allows you to trigger Sarah on your first turn. So then Sarah specials you a monster. Then Sarah sets you a free trap. And then you can make a rank 4 under Sarah. Just off of this and Sarah, you end Sarah, rank 4, and a trap. And you had 3 other cards in hand. It's really solid. It just works so perfectly with the deck that it's just such a great extender, for sure. Yeah, it's great. It's really great. Next up is Skill Drain. This is an interesting card because like most people don't even think about this card in Traptrix, but it's really good because Sarah is unaffected by trap cards. We already brought it up with Switcheroo, but pretty much all this does is it sits on the field. Your opponent gets no monster effects on the field, but you get Sarah. And so Sarah nonstop every turn is getting you a new Traptrix monster. And then getting you a new trap hole, and then you just can neutralize your opponent from there. Use your traps to just clean up the rest of your opponent's like situation, and it should be smooth sailing from there. It's a really powerful one of that I definitely would consider in this deck, just because Sarah just does not care. Everything else cares in your deck, but not Sarah, so it's good. Next up is Back to the Front. There's another interesting utility trap card in the deck. The reason I like this card and I think it's interesting in the deck is because it's the only trap card you're able to go into that actually like helps you get to your engine if your engine was ever put offline. If that makes sense. So like if you just ended on a basic board of like Sarah with traps, and your opponent like outed the Sarah, maybe they had a kaiju, maybe you didn't have anything to protect yourself from being just beaten over in the battle phase, and so you lost Sarah and never got a monster off of her, your opponent Ash Sarah or whatever it was, you didn't have a monster on the field. What Back to the Front allows is it just gives you a way where either Traptrix or Back to the Front can act as a way to just get you back into your monsters so that you can start doing stuff with your monsters again. Whereas if you didn't have one in hand and you didn't draw one for turn, on the next turn, you may not even be able to get a monster on board, and no matter how many backer you have, eventually your opponent's just going to beat you over and put you in a bad spot. So I like this card because it's a nice follow-up play. I do think it is iffy sometimes because depending on the hand, you could open a hand with not a lot of disruption, and then if you also have this card, you're kind of sitting there like, wow, I don't really stop my opponent from doing anything they want. I just have follow-up plays. Is not the best, but I still think it's pretty cool. Maybe it's just like a 2 of or something. It's an interesting card. I definitely consider it. Next up is Torrential Tribute. I believe this is the last trap on the list. This card is very, very cool in this deck specifically. We all know Torrential. It's very classic. When a monster is summoned, you can destroy all monsters on the field. Very powerful. The idea here is that if you have Sarah on the field, Sarah's unaffected by trap cards, so you wipe every other monster off the board. Then Sarah says, oh, special me a new monster. Oh, get me a new trap hole. You wipe the whole board, and then you get a +2. Pretty good. Pretty good. I don't know. It seems good to me, at least. It's really cool. Like, I just like that this energy. It's high impact. Obviously, a lot of meta decks have some resistance to this card. Stuff like Sally's, if they just get a Baling's Engrave, it's kind of already going to be in a bad. You're already going to be in a bad spot with Torrential Tribute because they can just protect everything. But if you fire it off early enough, you can definitely get it done. Or if you can bait the Baling's somehow, this can get the rest. But it's a really cool card. I definitely would consider it in the list as like a 2 of or something, just so you can get it with Traptrix if you want, but you're not seeing it too much, something like that. And then we get to our extra deck stuff. So the first thing I'm going to throw on the extra deck list here is Bujinki Ahashima. This is a very, very cool Link monster. If you don't know what this Link monster does, it takes any 2 monsters with the same levels. And then if this card is Link summoned, you can special summon 2 monsters with the exact same level, 1 from hand and 1 from grave. When you do, you immediately Exceed summon with them. So he just specials 2 with the same level and you Exceed. So you're going to be special summoning 2 level 4s and just making a rank 4 super quick. Also, if an Exceed monster this card points to activates its effect by detaching a material, you can just target a back row your opponent controls and destroy it. So you also get some extra removal in there as well. He can't be used as Link material, so it's a little awkward because he's only 1500, but still, like, it's totally fine. I think he's pretty solid. I think he's actually, in some certain situations, going to be a very good extender. I do think he's a little awkward because I feel like a lot of times you'd be wanting to make him, you'd want to use Sarah to go into him, but Sarah doesn't have a level, so she can't even be used as material for him. It has to be 2 level 4s. But I definitely could see some situations where, like, he lets you push for game. He lets you get the finishing punch in. If you are playing something like Utopia Double in your extra deck, you could easily just like use this turbo out Utopia Double real quick as and extend into him, just so you can go bang, 1-hit KO, like, you know what I mean, and just do it real quick. It'd be spicy, but definitely an interesting card in a deck that kind of revolves around making rank 4s in the mid game, so it's pretty cool. And the last card I have on here is Asa, the Earth Charmer Immovable. This card's very interesting. All the Charmer Link monsters work the same. They pretty much can be made with any 2 monsters as long as one of them is their attribute. So she just needs 1 Earth to make. Very easy. She says once per turn you can just target an Earth monster in your opponent's grave and just special summon it to a zone this card points to. And then also if this card is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, you can add any Earth monster with 1500 or less defense from your deck to your hand, which is any Traptrix monster. Again, very solid. I just think it's a nice, like, utility card. I think it's probably just a 1 of, but, like, if Traptrix legit become, like, good enough after Eternity Code, I wouldn't be surprised if this deck is, like, actually, like, a considerable threat and you actually run into this deck fairly often. This could be a big mirror match card. Earth is not the most obscure attribute either, so just generically you could be reborning your opponent's Earth monsters. just using this, like, it's a bigger beater than any normal Traptrix monster in your main deck. So you could take a Sarah and any Traptrix monster into this to get a beater that also floats. Sometimes in like mid game states, like this is actually a card you want to be utilizing as an extender. I think it's pretty cool. I think it's like weird. It'll like, it doesn't seem like it's crazy, but it definitely could come up in weird situations that you just want to, like, instead of just leaving Sarah on the field, you'd rather go into Asa. Like, you know your opponent can't remove her without destruction, and so you know you're going to get a float off of it, and you're also a bigger beater. So why not, right? So it's a cool card. I like it a lot. I definitely am going to try it and probably just tech it out as a one-of in the extra deck and see if it comes up enough to really warrant playing it. But it's a cool card for sure. But I think that's it, guys. Yep, it sure is. That's Yugioh. Those are my 11 tech choices for Traptrix. Those are probably my favorite, like, interesting ones that I'm going to be trying out in the upcoming months to see how they go. I think this deck really has a bright future. I think, like, we'll see what happens with artifacts. I definitely think with Dagda, Konami is definitely going to take a look at artifacts under a scope and see, like, if they can afford to leave Scythe not on the ban list, because locking people out of the extra deck just seems like insane in this game. So we'll see how that goes, but the deck seems really promising. I love this deck. Let me know your guys' thoughts on this down below. Obviously, there are other choices of cards I could have put on here. Let me know what card you think I should have put on here that I didn't, because these were just my personal choices. But thank you so much for watching. As always, subscribe to the channel if you have not yet, guys, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.